I am Judith Wilson, 65 years old, and my son Marcus broke my heart twice. First, when he refused to help pay for my knee surgery despite his six-figure salary. "I won't waste money on that," he said. Second, when I discovered he and his wife were vacationing in Hawaii that same week. After decades of sacrificing everything for him, I decided enough was enough. So I packed a special box and mailed it to his resort. If you want to know what was inside, you'll need to hear the whole story. Before I continue, I would love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit like if you've ever felt betrayed by family, and subscribe to join our community of survivors who refuse to be victims. My story begins like many others from my generation. I married young to Howard Wilson, had Marcus when I was 23, and thought we were building our forever. But life rarely follows the script we write for it. Howard died in a construction accident when Marcus was only 7 years old, leaving me alone to raise our son on a secretary's salary that barely covered rent. Those early years tested every ounce of my strength. I took on additional typing jobs in the evenings after Marcus went to bed, cleaning houses on weekends while he did homework at the kitchen table. The refrigerator was sometimes empty by month's end, but Marcus never went hungry because I always found a way to put food on his plate, even when it meant skipping meals myself. "Mom, aren't you eating?" he would ask, his small face concerned as I pretended to have had a late lunch. "I'm just not very hungry tonight, sweetheart," became my standard response. Despite our financial constraints, Marcus showed remarkable academic promise. His fourth-grade teacher, Mrs. Lawson, called me in for a conference one afternoon. "Judith, your son has exceptional mathematical abilities. He should be in the gifted program," she told me, sliding a brochure across her desk. The program required special materials, a graphing calculator, and participation fees that might as well have been $1 million to me then. That night, I called the phone company and downgraded our service. I canceled our small cable package and sold my wedding ring at a pawn shop. Marcus got everything he needed for the gifted program, and I still remember his face lighting up when I handed him that calculator. "This is the exact one all the high school kids use," he exclaimed, examining it with reverence. Throughout his teenage years, I continued these sacrifices. When the school announced a trip to Washington, D.C. for top students, I picked up night shifts at a local diner. When he needed a computer for high school, I took out a small loan I spent 3 years repaying. College applications brought another financial hurdle, but I was determined that my son would have opportunities one never did. Marcus earned a partial scholarship to State University, but it wasn't enough to cover everything. I remortgaged our small house to help with tuition, postponing retirement and working 60-hour weeks. During his sophomore year, I developed painful varicose veins from standing all day at the diner, but I never complained when we spoke on the phone. "How are your classes going?" I would ask instead, savoring his excited descriptions of business concepts that went over my head. He graduated with honors, landing a job at a prestigious financial consulting firm. I sat in the audience at his graduation ceremony, tears streaming down my face, certain that every sacrifice had been worthwhile. My son would have the life I couldn't provide for myself. The first few years after college, Marcus remained the thoughtful boy I had raised. He called regularly, visited on holidays, and even helped me replace my ancient refrigerator when it finally gave out. But things began to change when he met Vanessa Bradford at a company retreat. Vanessa came from money, old money, the kind that doesn't understand what it means to choose between paying the electric bill or buying groceries. She was beautiful, ambitious, and clearly saw Marcus as a project rather than a partner. Within 6 months of dating, his visits became less frequent, his calls shorter. "Mom, can we reschedule Sunday dinner? Vanessa and I are meeting her parents at their country club," became a regular conversation. I tried to be understanding. Young love is all-consuming, and I wanted him to be happy. But when they married in an extravagant ceremony, where I was seated at a back table, far from the wedding party, I realized my role in his life was diminishing. Vanessa barely acknowledged me at the reception, referring to me as Marcus's mother, rather than by my name, when introducing me to her friends. After the wedding, they bought a sprawling house in an exclusive neighborhood. Marcus was promoted rapidly at work, his salary increasing with each new title. Meanwhile, I retired from my administrative position with a modest pension that covered basic expenses, but left little room for emergencies. My knees, damaged from decades of standing at various jobs, began causing serious problems. The pain started gradually. First, it was just stiffness in the mornings, then difficulty climbing stairs. Eventually, I couldn't walk to the mailbox without stopping to rest. My doctor, Dr. Martinez, recommended physical therapy, which I dutifully attended until my insurance coverage ran out. When the pain continued worsening, he ordered an MRI. "You need a total knee replacement, Judith," he explained, showing me the images of bone grinding against bone. "Your right knee has essentially no cartilage left, and the left one isn't far behind." The surgery cost was astronomical even with Medicare. When I asked about payment plans, the hospital financial counselor looked sympathetic but firm. "We require a significant deposit before scheduling the procedure," she explained, sliding a paper with numbers across her desk that made my stomach drop. For months, I tried managing with cortisone injections and prescription pain medication, but my quality of life deteriorated rapidly. Simple tasks like grocery shopping became overwhelming challenges. My friend Eleanor Campbell, who lived in the same retirement community, noticed my decline during our weekly card games. "Judith, you can barely hold your cards. This isn't living," she said bluntly one afternoon when I grimaced while shifting in my chair. "Have you asked Marcus for help?" I shook my head, explaining that Marcus and Vanessa seemed busy with their own lives. They had just posted photos of their new luxury SUV on Facebook, alongside renovation plans for their vacation property. "He's your son," Eleanor insisted. "You gave everything for him. There's no shame in asking for help when you truly need it." After another sleepless night of pain, I finally agreed with Eleanor. Surely Marcus would want to know how much I was suffering. Surely the boy who once offered me his allowance to help with bills hadn't completely disappeared behind Vanessa's influence and his corporate success. I picked up the phone and dialed his number, my finger hovering for a moment before pressing call. Little did I know that conversation would change everything between us and set in motion a series of events that would test the very foundation of our relationship. It took 3 attempts before Marcus answered my call. The first 2 went to voicemail and he never returned them. When he finally picked up on that Wednesday evening, his voice sounded distracted. "Mom? Sorry, I'm just walking into a meeting. Can I call you back?" "Marcus, I really need to talk to you about something important," I said, trying to keep the desperation from my voice. "It will only take a few minutes." I heard him sigh before murmuring something to someone in the background. "Fine. What's up?" The casual dismissiveness in his tone made me hesitate, but I pressed on, explaining about my deteriorating knee condition and the specialist's recommendation for surgery. "Dr. Martinez says if I don't get the replacement soon, I might lose mobility completely," I explained, my voice catching. "The problem is the cost. Even with Medicare, my portion would be over $20,000 for both knees." There was silence on the other end of the line. I waited, heart pounding, before adding, "I've tried to figure out another way, Marcus. I've looked into loans, but on my fixed income, no bank will approve that amount. I've already used most of my savings when the furnace went out last winter." "Mom, we're really tight right now with the house renovations," Marcus finally replied, his voice strangely formal. "Vanessa and I just committed to redoing the master bath and closet. The contractor required a 50% deposit." I closed my eyes, thinking of their sprawling 5-bedroom house that already had more bathrooms than people to use them. Their combined income was well into the 6 figures. Meanwhile, I was skipping doses of pain medication to make the prescription last longer. "I wouldn't ask if I had any other option," I said quietly. "I can barely walk to the kitchen anymore. Eleanor has been bringing me groceries because I can't push a cart through the store. Have you looked into one of those payment plans?" Marcus asked, his voice taking on the same tone he used when explaining financial concepts to me, as though I hadn't already explored every possible avenue. "The hospital requires a substantial deposit up front that I don't have," I explained patiently. "And they won't schedule the surgery without it." I heard muffled voices in the background, then clearly Vanessa's voice saying, "Is that your mother again? Tell her we've got our own expenses." My chest tightened at her words. Again? Had they discussed me asking for money before I'd even called? Look, Mom, Marcus continued, his voice hardening in a way I'd never heard before. I'm not going to waste my money on this surgery when there are probably other options you haven't considered. Have you thought about a second opinion, or maybe just using a walker for a while? I sat stunned, the phone growing slippery in my hand. Waste his money? The words echoed in my head, as though spoken by a stranger. Not the boy who once made me Mother's Day cards promising to take care of me when I got old. A walker won't fix bone grinding against bone, Marcus, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. And every specialist will tell you the same thing. This isn't elective surgery. It's necessary for basic functioning. I'll think about it and talk to Vanessa, he said dismissively. But don't get your hopes up. We have financial goals we're working toward, and unexpected expenses throw off our entire plan. In the background, I heard Vanessa again, her voice impatient. We're going to be late for dinner with the Richardsons. Their daughter just got accepted to Princeton, remember? I've got to go, Mom. We have dinner plans. I'll call you next week, Marcus said. Marcus, please, I began, but the line had already gone dead. I sat holding the silent phone for nearly 10 minutes, tears rolling down my cheeks. The boy I'd raised would never have treated anyone this way, let alone his own mother. What had happened to him? What had I done wrong? Days passed with no return call. I tried texting him once, receiving only a brief reply. Still thinking about it. Things are crazy at work right now. The pain in my knees worsened, forcing me to use a wheelchair Eleanor had borrowed from her church. Simple tasks like showering became dangerous endeavors. I fell once, catching myself on the towel rack, which tore from the wall under my weight. The bruise bloomed purple across my forearm, a physical manifestation of my increasing vulnerability. A week after our conversation, still waiting for Marcus to call back, I was scrolling through Facebook when a post from Vanessa appeared on my feed. There they were, standing in a high-end luggage store, surrounded by matching designer suitcases. The caption read, "Shopping for our Hawaii getaway. 2 weeks of paradise, here we come. #blessed, #nor egrets." My hand trembled as I clicked on her profile. More photos appeared. Marcus and Vanessa at a resort wear boutique, buying expensive swimsuits and sunglasses. Another post showed Vanessa holding up room confirmation details for the Grand Wailea, a luxury resort where rooms started at over $800 per night. The final blow came when I saw Marcus's comment on one of the photos. Money well spent for memories that will last a lifetime. Money well spent. Not a waste like his mother's knee surgery. I closed the laptop, a strange calm replacing my initial shock. For years, I had made excuses for Marcus's growing distance. He was busy building his career. Vanessa came from a different world. They were establishing their own life together. But this was different. This was a deliberate choice to prioritize luxury over my basic needs, my ability to walk, to live independently. That night, Eleanor came over with dinner and found me sitting in the dark. "He's not going to help me," I told her as she turned on the lights and saw my tear-stained face. "They're spending thousands on a Hawaii vacation instead." Eleanor's usually gentle face hardened as I showed her the social media posts. "Those ungrateful, selfish." She didn't finish the sentence, instead pulling me into a hug that nearly broke me with its kindness. "What am I going to do?" I whispered against her shoulder. "First, we're going to eat this lasagna before it gets cold," she said practically. "Then we're going to figure this out. You've spent your life solving problems for others. Now we'll solve this one for you." We ate dinner, though I tasted nothing. Eleanor helped me into bed before she left, promising to return the next day. After she was gone, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying Marcus's words in my head. I won't waste my money on this surgery. The son I had raised would never have said those words. But perhaps the son I had now needed to understand exactly what kind of mother he had so easily dismissed. As dawn broke, I reached for my phone and began making plans. If Marcus and Vanessa were heading to Hawaii, I had a special delivery that needed to arrive during their stay. The day after discovering Marcus's Hawaii plans, my right knee gave out completely as I tried to stand from the toilet. I crashed to the bathroom floor, my head barely missing the edge of the sink. For 20 minutes I lay there, unable to pull myself up, my cell phone charging uselessly in the kitchen. The cold tile pressed against my cheek as I contemplated the terrifying reality that I could die here, alone, undiscovered for days. Eventually, I managed to drag myself to the door and call for help. My neighbor Gladys Peterson heard me from her adjoining patio where she was watering plants. Tiny but mighty at 78, Gladys helped me into my wheelchair and insisted on staying. "I'm calling Dr. Martinez," she said firmly, ignoring my protests. "And then I'm making a schedule for neighbors to check on you daily. This isn't sustainable, Judith." Dr. Martinez fit me in that afternoon, Gladys driving me in her ancient Buick. His face grew grave as he examined my knees. "The right one has deteriorated faster than I anticipated," he said. "We really can't wait much longer on the surgery. The risk of permanent damage increases every week." "I don't have the money," I admitted, shame burning my cheeks despite knowing I had nothing to be embarrassed about. Poverty isn't a moral failing, but in America it often feels like one. "Let me talk to the hospital financial department again," he offered. "There might be a charity program you qualify for, though the waiting list is substantial." As Gladys wheeled me out of the office, a familiar voice called my name. Ryan Peterson, Marcus's childhood best friend, stood in the waiting room, surprise registering on his face. "Mrs. Wilson, I thought that was you," he said, walking over. His smile faded as he took in the wheelchair. "Are you okay?" "Knee problems," I said vaguely, not wanting to burden him with my troubles. Ryan knelt beside the wheelchair. "That looks serious. Marcus mentioned you were having some health issues, but I didn't realize." "You've spoken to Marcus recently?" I asked, surprised. The boys had drifted apart after college, with Ryan becoming a high school teacher while Marcus entered the corporate world. "Last week at our 20-year high school reunion," Ryan nodded. "He was talking about his new promotion and bonus. Said he and Vanessa were celebrating with some big vacation." The words hit like a physical blow. Bonus. Marcus had received a bonus large enough to celebrate with a luxury vacation, yet told me they were too financially tight to help with my surgery. "Mrs. Wilson, are you all right?" Ryan asked, concern etching his features. "Just tired," I managed. "It was good seeing you, Ryan." Gladys remained silent until we were back in her car. "That boy mentioned a bonus?" I nodded, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. "Judith Wilson, I've known you for 15 years. And I've never seen you stand up for yourself once," she said, starting the engine with a determined twist of the key. "Maybe it's time you did." Back at home, confined to my wheelchair, I found myself drawn to the spare bedroom closet, where I'd stored mementos from Marcus's childhood. Gladys helped me retrieve several boxes, placing them on the dining table, before leaving me with a gentle squeeze of my shoulder. For hours, I sifted through evidence of a life dedicated to my son's happiness. School projects where I had stayed up late helping him glue pieces together. Report cards with teacher comments praising his work ethic, a quality I had modeled daily. Photos from the camping trip I had saved for months to afford, where Marcus caught his first fish. Near the bottom of the second box, I found a collection of cards he had made me throughout the years. One from 5th grade read, "To the best mom ever. When I grow up and get rich, I'm going to buy you a mansion with an elevator so you never have to climb stairs." The childish handwriting blurred through my tears. Beneath the cards lay a small velvet box containing my mother's antique locket and my grandmother's wedding band, family heirlooms I had planned to pass down to Marcus's future wife before Vanessa made it clear my family traditions weren't grand enough for their life. These treasures, along with Howard's pocket watch and his father's military medals, were the only items of financial value I possessed, but their sentimental worth was immeasurable. Marcus had always been fascinated by his grandfather's medals, asking to see them on quiet Sunday afternoons when he was a boy. "These will be yours someday," I had promised, "to remember where you came from." As evening fell, I received a call from my sister Patricia, who lived in Arizona. Our weekly check-ins usually covered benign topics like her garden or my card games with Eleanor. This time I found myself spilling the entire story about Marcus, the surgery, and the Hawaii trip. "That little ingrate," Patricia spat when I finished. "After everything you did for him." "I don't know what to do, Patty," I admitted. I can't afford the surgery, but I can't live like this either. You know what I'd do? Patricia said, her voice taking on the determined tone that had terrified us both as children when directed our way. I'd remind him exactly what kind of mother he's turning his back on. Send him every photo, every card, every piece of evidence showing how you sacrificed for him. Include the medical bills he's too selfish to help with. Let him see in black and white what he's doing. I couldn't, I protested weakly. That would seem manipulative. Is it manipulative to show someone the truth? Marcus is living in a fantasy world where he owes you nothing. Reality might be exactly what he needs. After we hung up, I sat looking at the spread of memories across my table. The idea Patricia suggested felt uncomfortable, almost petty. I had never been one for confrontation or emotional manipulation. But as I tried to stand again, the searing pain that shot through my knee reminded me of my new reality. I was physically disabled by a condition that could be fixed. My son had the means to help but chose a luxury vacation instead. For the first time in my life, I felt something unfamiliar burning in my chest, righteous anger. Eleanor came by the next morning with coffee and found me still at the dining table, surrounded by memories. I haven't slept, I told her, accepting the warm cup gratefully. I've been thinking all night. About the surgery? Did you call that charity program Dr. Martinez mentioned? I shook my head. About Marcus. About what kind of mother raises a son who would do this. And about what kind of mother I want to be going forward. Eleanor's eyebrows rose as I explained Patricia's suggestion and my evolving thoughts. You've spent your entire life being understanding of everyone else's needs and feelings, she said slowly. Maybe it's time someone understood yours. I'm going to do it, I decided, straightening in my wheelchair. I'm going to send him a package that shows him exactly what he's throwing away. Not just his mother, but his history, his roots. Good, Eleanor said simply. And the surgery? I'm going to cash out my IRA. There's a tax penalty, but I don't have a choice anymore. I can't wait and hope Marcus develops a conscience. Eleanor nodded, reaching for her phone. I'll call my son Thomas. He's an accountant. He can help you figure out the most efficient way to access those funds. As she dialed, I looked down at my grandmother's wedding band glinting in the morning light. For generations, the women in my family had endured hardship with quiet dignity. But sometimes dignity requires standing up for yourself, even when your opponent is someone you love. Especially then. By afternoon, with Eleanor and Thomas's help, I had a financial plan for the surgery. And by evening, I had a plan for making sure my son understood exactly what his rejection had cost us both. The next morning, I asked Eleanor to bring me several shipping boxes from the post office. While waiting for her return, I methodically sorted through the mementos spread across my dining table, considering each one's significance in telling the story of Marcus's childhood and my sacrifices. First, I selected the handmade Mother's Day cards. The construction paper had faded over the decades, but the messages remained clear. To the best mom ever. I love you to the moon and back. Thank you for working so hard for us. I chose 5 that specifically mention my sacrifices or promise future care, including the 5th grade card about buying me a mansion with an elevator. Next came the photographs. Marcus at 7, standing beside me at Howard's funeral, his small hand clutching mine as we both tried to be brave. Marcus at 10, proudly holding the science fair trophy I had stayed up 3 nights helping him prepare for. Marcus at 16, beaming beside the second-hand car I had saved 2 years to afford, giving him the independence I knew he craved. And finally, Marcus at his college graduation, his arm around my shoulders, both of us tired but triumphant after the long journey to his degree. I included copies of his school awards and certificates, the gifted program acceptance letter, his honor roll certificates, the Presidential Academic Award from high school. Each represented not just his achievements, but countless hours of my support, encouragement, and practical help. From the financial records box in my bedroom closet, I retrieved documentation of the sacrifices that wouldn't be obvious from sentimental items alone. The remortgage paperwork for the house to pay his college tuition. Bank statements showing the depletion of my small savings during his university years. The loan papers for his first semester books and computer. Most significantly, I added my mother's locket containing a tiny photograph of Howard and me on our wedding day, my grandmother's wedding band, Howard's pocket watch, and his father's military medals. These family heirlooms represented our history and legacy, items Marcus had always assumed would eventually be his. Finally, I gathered the medical documentation. Dr. Martinez's initial diagnosis, the MRI results showing the bone-on-bone condition of my knees, the surgical recommendation letters, the hospital's cost estimate, my Medicare paperwork showing the portion I would be responsible for, and most damning, the rejection letters from 3 different loan companies stating my fixed income was insufficient for the amount needed. With these items assembled, I sat at my kitchen table and began writing what was perhaps the most difficult letter of my life. Dear Marcus, this box contains 2 stories. The first is the story of a mother who sacrificed everything for her son. The second is the story of a son who refused to help that mother when she needed him most. Each item enclosed represents a moment when I chose you over myself. The remortgage papers show how I chose your education over my financial security. The bank statements demonstrate how I chose your opportunities over my retirement savings. The cards show promises you made and have now broken. The family heirlooms included were meant to be passed down to you, connecting you to your heritage and the people who loved you before you were born. I've realized that these treasures should go to someone who values family and history. Since that no longer seems to be you, I am entrusting them to people who will appreciate their significance. Finally, I've included my medical documentation so you can see exactly what you dismissed as not worth wasting your money on. While you enjoy your Hawaiian vacation, I will be cashing out my retirement account, accepting the substantial tax penalty, because I have no other option. I raised you to be a man of compassion and integrity. I don't recognize the person you've become. Perhaps these mementos will remind you of who you were, and still could be. Love always, Mom. I read the letter 3 times, fighting the urge to soften its message. This wasn't about guilt or manipulation. It was about truth, about showing Marcus the reality of his choices in a way he couldn't ignore or dismiss. Eleanor returned with the shipping boxes and helped me carefully pack each item, wrapping the fragile heirlooms in bubble wrap. She read my letter silently, tears forming in her eyes. This is perfect, Judith. Honest without being cruel. He needs to see this. I nodded, unable to speak as we sealed the box. After adding Marcus's name and the resort address Vanessa had so helpfully posted on social media, Eleanor asked, "Are you sure about this? Once it's sent, you can't take it back." "I'm sure," I said firmly. "Even if nothing changes between us, I need to stand up for myself. I've spent my life being understanding of everyone else. It's time someone understood me." The next day, Gladys drove me to the post office. The clerk, Fred Thompson, had known me for years and looked concerned seeing me in the wheelchair. Knee problems finally got the best of me, I explained as he helped lift the box onto the counter. "Surgery scheduled?" he asked kindly. "Working on it," I replied, not wanting to elaborate. Fred looked at the Hawaii address. "Sending a care package to someone special?" "To my son," I said simply. "I'm sending him some family history." The cost of 2-day shipping with delivery confirmation was significant, another expense I could ill afford, but I needed to know exactly when the package would arrive during their vacation. As Fred processed the paperwork, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Grief for what I was losing, anxiety about Marcus's reaction, but predominantly, a sense of relief. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I was prioritizing my own needs and feelings. "All set, Mrs. Wilson," Fred said, handing me the receipt. "Scheduled for delivery next Tuesday." Tuesday, the day I would be admitted to the hospital for my surgery, having made arrangements over the weekend to cash out my IRA. The timing seemed appropriate somehow. As Gladys drove me home, she glanced over with an approving nod. "I've known you 15 years, Judith Wilson, and this is the first time I've seen you stand up for yourself. It suits you." Back at home, I focused on practical preparations for the surgery. Eleanor had offered her spare bedroom for my recovery, as her single-story home would be easier to navigate than my 2-bedroom townhouse with its essential facilities upstairs. That night, I slept better than I had in months, despite the physical pain. There's a certain peace that comes with speaking your truth, even when the words hurt to say. The package was on its way to Marcus, and whatever came next, I would face it with the same strength and dignity that had carried me through widowhood, single motherhood, and now this final challenge, learning to put myself first after a lifetime of coming last. The morning of my surgery arrived with a gentle June rain tapping against the windows. Eleanor came early to help me prepare, bringing an overnight bag packed for my hospital stay and subsequent recovery at her house. Thomas called the hospital yesterday. She informed me as she helped me dress. Your payment has been processed, and everything is confirmed. I nodded, a wave of anxiety washing over me that had nothing to do with the impending procedure. The package should be delivered to Marcus today. Eleanor squeezed my hand. Let's focus on getting you through surgery first. Marcus will have to deal with his own feelings, just like you've had to deal with yours. Dr. Martinez met us at the hospital entrance, concern evident in his expression. When the financial department told me you were paying out of pocket, I nearly called you to object, he said as an orderly helped me into a wheelchair. But the head nurse mentioned you were determined to proceed. I can't live like this anymore, I replied simply, and I can't wait for charity program waiting lists. The pre-operative procedures passed in a blur of forms, vital signs, and sterile preparation. As they administered the anesthetic, my last conscious thought was of Marcus as a small boy, rushing into my arms after his first day of kindergarten. I missed you so much, Mommy, he had said, his face buried against my neck. When I awoke in the recovery room, the first sensation was pain, followed immediately by the awareness that Eleanor was holding my hand. Her familiar face swam into focus as my vision cleared. You did great, she assured me. Dr. Martinez said the surgery went perfectly. I tried to speak, my throat dry and voice raspy. Has Marcus? Eleanor shook her head. No calls or messages. The package was delivered this morning. I checked the tracking. I closed my eyes, unsure whether I felt disappointed or relieved. Part of me had fantasized that Marcus would somehow receive the package, immediately recognize his terrible mistake, and rush to be by my side during surgery. The rational part knew this was unlikely, but hope rarely listens to reason. The next 3 days in the hospital were a lesson in patience and humility. Basic bodily functions required assistance. Pain medication left me foggy and nauseated. Physical therapists arrived with torturous exercises that brought tears to my eyes. Through it all, Eleanor remained constant, staying well beyond visiting hours thanks to her friendship with the head nurse. On the third day, as a physical therapist named Brenda guided me through exercises, I received notification on my phone that the package had been delivered and signed for by V. Wilson 5 days earlier. Your heart rate just jumped, Brenda noted, glancing at the monitor. Are you in pain? Not physical pain, I replied honestly. That evening, Dr. Martinez approved my discharge into Eleanor's care. Her son Thomas arrived with his minivan specially equipped to transport me safely to her ranch-style home across town. As they settled me into the guest bedroom that would be mine for the next several weeks, I checked my phone again. No calls. No texts. No acknowledgement from Marcus that he had received a box containing our family's most precious heirlooms and the evidence of his mother's physical suffering. He might need time to process, Eleanor suggested gently when she saw my expression. It was a lot to take in, especially during a vacation. I nodded, though I didn't really believe it. The son who had once promised to take care of me when I grew old hadn't bothered to call after receiving such a package. The truth was becoming increasingly clear. Marcus had chosen Vanessa's world and values over everything I had taught him. The days of recovery blended together in Eleanor's comfortable guest room. Physical therapists came to the house 3 times weekly. Neighbors from our retirement community organized a meal train, dropping off home-cooked dinners with handwritten notes of encouragement. Gladys visited daily, bringing library books and gossip to keep my spirits up. A week after the surgery, I received an unexpected visit from Ryan Peterson, Marcus's childhood friend. He arrived with yellow roses and a card signed by several of their old high school teammates. We heard about your surgery through the grapevine, he explained, looking uncomfortable. I ran into Gladys at the grocery store. That's very thoughtful, I said, genuinely touched by the gesture. Ryan hesitated before adding, I tried to call Marcus to let him know, but he didn't pick up. I left a message. I nodded, unsurprised. They're in Hawaii. Probably busy with excursions and luau's. Ryan's expression clouded. They got back 3 days ago. He posted photos of their new kitchen renovation project yesterday. The information settled like a stone in my stomach. They were home. Marcus had received my package nearly a week ago. He had returned from vacation and still couldn't be bothered to call his mother after her surgery. After Ryan left, I allowed myself 10 minutes of tears before deliberately redirecting my thoughts. The surgery was done. My recovery was progressing well, according to the physical therapists. I had a support system of friends who had shown more care and concern than my own son. Perhaps it was time to accept that the relationship I thought we had was gone, replaced by something distant and conditional. 2 weeks post-surgery, I was making remarkable progress. The physical therapist had upgraded me from a walker to a cane for short distances within Eleanor's house. The incision was healing cleanly, and the pain, while still present, was different from the bone-on-bone agony I had endured for months. That Wednesday afternoon, Eleanor helped me settle in the sunroom with a novel and a cup of tea before leaving for her weekly hair appointment. "Thomas is on standby if you need anything," she assured me. "Just call and he'll be here in 10 minutes. I had just finished my tea when the doorbell rang. Assuming it was another neighbor with a casserole, I called out, "Come in." The doors unlocked. The door opened and footsteps sounded in the entryway. Heavy, familiar footsteps that froze me in place before I even saw his face. Marcus stood in the sunroom doorway, his expression unreadable. He looked tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from emotional rather than physical exertion. "Mom," he said, his voice catching on the single syllable. I straightened in my chair, suddenly conscious of my appearance. Hair unstyled, wearing Eleanor's borrowed loungewear, a cane propped against the armrest. "Marcus," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "This is unexpected." He remained in the doorway as though uncertain of his welcome. "Gladys told me you were staying with Eleanor after the surgery. The surgery you paid for yourself." The accusation in his tone surprised me. "Yes. As I told you I would have to do. Why didn't you tell me the date? Why didn't you call me when you were admitted?" The questions burst from him with unexpected force. I stared at him, genuinely confused by his anger. "You made it very clear you didn't want to waste your money on my medical needs. Why would I burden you with the details?" Marcus flinched at hearing his own words repeated back to him. He finally entered the room, taking the chair opposite mine. Up close, I could see redness around his eyes. "I got your package," he said unnecessarily. "In Hawaii." "I know. I received the delivery confirmation. Vanessa opened it," he continued, running a hand through his hair. "She thought it was a gift from her parents. They knew where we were staying." I said nothing, waiting. This detail explained why the signature was V. Wilson, but changed nothing about the situation. "She was upset," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "Seeing all those cards, the photos, the medical records. She said it was manipulative and inappropriate to send something like that during our vacation." "And what did you think?" I asked quietly. Marcus looked up, meeting my eyes for the first time. "I thought it was the most honest thing you've ever done." For several moments we sat in silence, the weight of his words hanging between us. Outside, birds chirped in Eleanor's garden, oblivious to the human drama unfolding within. "The package arrived our 3rd day in Hawaii," Marcus finally continued. "We had just returned from a sunset cruise. Vanessa was already annoyed because I'd spent most of it on my phone dealing with a work crisis." I remained silent, letting him speak without interruption. When she opened the box and saw what was inside, she was furious. Called it emotional blackmail. Said you were trying to ruin our vacation. His voice grew quieter. But then I saw the medical reports, the loan rejections, the bank statements from when I was in college. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew my grandmother's wedding band and mother's locket. "I couldn't let these go. The other things, the medals, the watch, I understand why you sent them, but these belong to you. I made no move to take them. Those were meant to be passed down, Marcus, to someone who values family history and connections." "I do value them," he insisted, his voice breaking slightly. Got lost somewhere along the way. Lost? I repeated. You weren't lost when you told me you wouldn't waste money on surgery I needed to walk again. You weren't lost when you posted about your luxury vacation while knowing I was struggling. Those were choices, Marcus. Deliberate decisions to prioritize your comfort over my basic needs. He flinched at the directness of my words. In the past, I would have softened the blow, made excuses for him, taken partial blame myself. But that Judith was gone, replaced by a woman who had finally learned the value of her own worth. You're right, he admitted, surprising me. They were choices. Terrible ones. Why? I asked the question that had haunted me for months. What happened to the boy who promised to take care of me when I got old? Who said he'd buy me a mansion with an elevator? Marcus stared down at the heirlooms in his palm. I don't have a good answer. It happened gradually. Vanessa has certain expectations about our lifestyle. Her family judges everything by appearances, by material success. I started to believe that was important too. More important than your mother being able to walk? He shook his head, shame evident in his posture. No. Nothing is more important than that. I see that now. He finally looked up, his eyes wet. When I got your package, saw everything laid out like that, I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. About what I'd done. About who I've become. And who is that? I asked, not unkindly. Someone my younger self would hate, he admitted. Someone who forgot where he came from and what really matters. I studied my son's face, searching for the boy I had raised in the man before me. There were glimpses there, in the way his eyes crinkled at the corners, in the nervous habit of running his hand through his hair. The day after we got your package, I told Vanessa I was flying home, Marcus continued. She refused to leave early, said I was choosing you over her. We had our worst fight ever. Right there in that luxury resort you couldn't afford to visit if you saved for years. I'm sorry, I said automatically, then caught myself. No, actually I'm not sorry. Your relationship with your wife is separate from your obligation to treat your mother with basic human decency. Marcus nodded. That's almost exactly what I told her. I said my mother raised me alone, sacrificed everything for me, and deserved better than what I'd given her. She said I was being manipulated by guilt. And were you? I asked, genuinely curious about his perspective. No, he replied firmly. I was finally seeing clearly after years of letting Vanessa's priorities become my own. I left Hawaii the next morning. Vanessa stayed for the remainder of the trip with her sister flying out to join her. Where have you been since returning? It's been over a week. Staying at a hotel, trying to figure out what to do next. Vanessa and I. He trailed off, then straightened his shoulders. We're separating. I moved my things out yesterday. The news shocked me, despite the obvious tension he'd described. Marcus, I never wanted to cause problems in your marriage. You didn't, he assured me. This was a long time coming. Vanessa and I want fundamentally different things in life. It took your package to make me see that clearly. He leaned forward, placing the heirlooms on the side table between us. I came here to apologize, though I know that's inadequate. I also came to pay for your surgery, but the hospital said it's already been paid in full. I cashed out my IRA, I explained. There was a tax penalty, but I had no choice. Marcus winced. I want to reimburse you. Every penny, plus the penalty. I don't want your money anymore, Marcus, I said quietly. What I wanted was for my son to care about my well-being. To see me as a person with needs, not just the woman who raised him and then became inconvenient. I do care, he insisted. I've always cared. I just let myself be influenced by someone who didn't. I considered his words carefully before responding. Taking financial responsibility for the surgery costs would be a start in rebuilding trust, but money alone doesn't fix what's broken between us. Marcus nodded, understanding evident in his expression. What would help? Tell me what you need from me now. The question caught me off guard. After months of being dismissed, having my son ask directly what I needed felt almost disorienting. I need time, I finally answered. Time to heal physically and emotionally. Time to see if your actions match these new words. And I need honesty between us going forward, even when it's uncomfortable. I can give you those things, he promised. And I'd like to visit regularly if you'll allow it. Get to know the mother I've been taking for granted all these years. For the first time since he arrived, I felt a small smile form. I'd like that too. Eleanor's key turned in the front door and she called out, Judith? I'm back from the salon. Thomas dropped off a casserole from Linda next door. She appeared in the sunroom doorway, freezing when she spotted Marcus. Her normally friendly expression hardened instantly. Hello, Eleanor, Marcus said, standing awkwardly. Eleanor looked to me, clearly waiting for a signal about how to proceed. I gave her a reassuring nod. Marcus and I have been having an overdue conversation, I explained. Would you mind giving us a few more minutes? Of course, she replied, though her pointed look at Marcus clearly communicated that she had plenty to say to him when the time came. I'll be in the kitchen when you're ready. After she left, Marcus smiled ruefully. I see I have more apologies to make. Your friends have been taking better care of you than your own son. They have, I agreed. But they shouldn't have had to. No, they shouldn't. He reached for my hand tentatively. I'd like to help with your recovery, if you'll let me. Drive you to physical therapy, help with exercises, whatever you need. I considered his offer, thinking about the long recovery road ahead. That would be helpful. But Marcus, I need you to understand something important. He waited, giving me his full attention. I'm not the same mother you've known all your life, I told him. That woman let everyone's needs come before her own. She made excuses for people who hurt her. She's gone. The woman sitting before you now understands her own worth, and she expects to be treated accordingly. Marcus squeezed my hand gently. I think I'd like to get to know this new version of my mother very much. As he helped me up from the chair, supporting my weight while I balanced with the cane, I realized we were both embarking on a new chapter neither of us had anticipated. The package I had sent in anger and desperation had somehow created an opening for truth between us. What we built on that foundation remained to be seen, but for the first time in months, I felt something like hope taking root alongside my newly discovered self-respect. 6 months after my surgery, I stood at my kitchen window watching autumn leaves dance across my backyard. Without thinking, I had risen from my chair and walked to the window completely unaided, no cane or walker required. These small victories continued to surprise me, moments of ordinary movement that had once been impossible now accomplished without conscious effort. The physical therapist had declared my recovery remarkable, attributing it to both surgical success and my diligent adherence to the exercise regimen. What she didn't know was how much of that diligence stemmed from my newfound determination to build a life of independence and self-respect. My doorbell rang promptly at 11, Marcus arriving for our weekly lunch, as he had every Tuesday since our confrontation at Eleanor's house. In the beginning, these visits had been awkward, conversations stilted as we carefully navigated our new relationship. Gradually, the discomfort had given way to a different kind of connection, one built on honesty rather than obligation. I brought Italian, Marcus called out as he entered, carrying bags from Salvatore's, my favorite local restaurant, and I picked up your prescription refill on the way. You didn't have to do that, I said, though I was grateful for the gesture. I know, he replied simply, setting the food on the dining table. I wanted to. This was the new pattern between us. Marcus helped not because I couldn't manage, but because he genuinely wanted to be part of my life. The distinction mattered. As we settled at the table, Marcus updated me on his new apartment and position at work. After separating from Vanessa, he had transferred to a different division within his company, one that allowed him more personal time and less corporate entertaining. The divorce papers were finalized yesterday, he mentioned, his tone matter-of-fact rather than mournful. Vanessa got the house, I kept my retirement accounts. Clean break. I nodded, unsure what response he wanted. Though I had never said, I told you so about his marriage, we both knew my concerns about Vanessa's values had proven valid. Patricia called this morning, I said, changing the subject. She's planning to visit for Thanksgiving. It's been 3 years since she made the trip from Arizona. That's great, Marcus replied enthusiastically. I've always liked Aunt Patty. She never sugar-coated anything. I laughed, thinking of my straight-talking sister who had encouraged me to send the package that changed everything. No, she certainly doesn't. After lunch, Marcus helped me sort through boxes in the garage, a project we had been tackling gradually each week. Most contained household items accumulated over decades, but occasionally we discovered forgotten treasures that sparked conversations about the past. Remember this? Marcus asked, holding up a small trophy with a tarnished baseball figure on top. My first Little League championship. Coach Evans said you had the best swing he'd seen in a 10-year-old. I recalled, the memory suddenly vivid. You practiced in the backyard every evening that summer. With that plastic bat and wiffle balls, Marcus added. You pitched to me for hours after working all day. These shared recollections have become precious to me. Bridges connecting the mother and son we had been to the people we were becoming. Later that afternoon, Patricia called again while Marcus was still there. I put her on speakerphone. So the prodigal son is still making his weekly appearances? She asked, her directness unchanged by distance. Right here, Aunt Patty, Marcus replied good-naturedly. Still trying to make amends. Good, she said firmly. Because what you did was inexcusable. I know, he acknowledged without defensiveness. Trust me, I live with that knowledge every day. Patricia snorted. Well, at least you're smart enough to recognize it. Your mother raised you right, even if you forgot it for a while. After we ended the call, Marcus helped me prepare for my weekly card game with Eleanor and Gladys. As he arranged chairs around the dining table, he asked, would it be okay if I joined you all next week? I know it's usually ladies only, but I'd like to get to know your friends better. The request surprised me. You want to play bridge with 3 women in their 60s and 70s? Why not? From what you've told me, Eleanor and Gladys are more interesting than most people I meet at work functions. Besides, I should thank them properly for taking care of you when I didn't. I studied my son's face, searching for insincerity and finding none. I'll ask them, but I'm sure they'd welcome you. Eleanor's been warming up to you since you fixed her garbage disposal. Later, after Marcus had left, I retrieved a small box from my bedroom closet containing the family heirlooms he had returned at Eleanor's house. For months they had remained there untouched, as I considered their significance and future. The next Tuesday, when Marcus arrived for lunch, I placed the box on the table between us. I want you to have these, I said quietly. Not because you've earned them back or because I feel obligated, but because they belong in the family and you are my family. Marcus looked at the box without touching it. Are you sure? After everything. These past 6 months have shown me who you truly are, I replied. The man who got lost for a while but found his way back. That man deserves to be the keeper of our family history. He carefully opened the box, lifting out my grandmother's wedding band and mother's locket with reverence. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything. Just remember where you came from, and someday, pass these on to someone who will value their meaning. The following week, Marcus joined our card game as planned. To my surprise, Eleanor and Gladys welcomed him warmly, though not without pointed remarks about his previous absence. So you finally figured out what matters, did you? Gladys asked bluntly as she shuffled the cards. I'm trying to, Marcus replied. Some lessons come harder than others. Well, you're here now, Eleanor conceded, dealing the first hand. And unlike some people, I believe in second chances. By evening's end, Marcus had lost $20 to the card sharks and gained their tentative approval. As he helped clean up afterward, Eleanor pulled me aside. He's really trying, she observed. And he's got your stubbornness. That's a good combination. The weeks flowed into months, our new patterns solidifying into something resembling family again. Marcus attended my final physical therapy session, celebrating the milestone by taking me to dinner with Eleanor, Gladys, and several other neighbors who had supported me through recovery. On Thanksgiving, Patricia arrived with her usual whirlwind energy, immediately inspecting my knees and interrogating Marcus about his divorce and future plans. To his credit, he answered every question honestly, even the uncomfortable ones about why he had prioritized Vanessa's luxury demands over my medical needs. I lost sight of what matters, he admitted as we sat around my dining table. I got caught up in impressing others instead of being the person Mom raised me to be. Patricia studied him critically before nodding once. Well, at least you're not trying to make excuses. That's something. After dinner, as Patricia and Eleanor washed dishes despite my protests, Marcus asked if we could speak privately. We stepped onto the back patio, the November air crisp but not yet winter cold. I've been thinking about what you said months ago, he began. About not being the same mother I'd known all my life. About understanding your own worth. I nodded, remembering the conversation clearly. I want you to know I'm proud of you, Marcus continued, his voice sincere. Not just for recovering from surgery or forgiving me, but for standing up for yourself. For sending that package and demanding to be seen. His words touched something deep within me. All my life, I had been the one expressing pride in others while downplaying my own accomplishments. Having my son recognize my strength felt like closing a circle somehow. I'm proud of myself too, I admitted. And I'm learning to be proud of you again as well. Marcus smiled, the expression reaching his eyes in a way that reminded me of the boy he had been. That means everything. As winter settled over our small community, I reflected often on the journey of the past year. From physical helplessness and emotional betrayal to strength and renewed connection. The package I had sent in desperation had initiated painful but necessary changes for us both. Marcus continued his weekly visits, gradually bringing more of his authentic self to our conversations. He shared work challenges, dating disasters after his divorce, and eventually, his tentative steps toward building a life aligned with his true values rather than external expectations. I shared my own growth as well, describing how standing up to him had empowered me to advocate for myself in other relationships. How I had started volunteering at the hospital, supporting elderly patients navigating complicated medical systems. How I had finally learned at 65 that my needs mattered as much as anyone else's. One snowy afternoon as we sat drinking hot chocolate, Marcus asked the question that had clearly been on his mind for months. Do you ever regret sending that package? Pushing me away from Vanessa. I considered carefully before answering. I didn't send it to end your marriage, Marcus. I sent it to show you the truth about our relationship and your choices. What happened afterward was the result of you finally seeing that truth. He nodded slowly. I think I needed that wake-up call. I just wish it hadn't taken something so extreme. Sometimes, I replied, the most important lessons come wrapped in the most difficult packages. As I look back now, I realize that by refusing to help with my surgery and prioritizing his Hawaiian vacation, Marcus inadvertently gave me something far more valuable than money. He gave me the opportunity to find my voice, to stand up for myself, and to discover a strength I never knew I possessed. The mother who sent that package filled with family heirlooms and medical bills is not the same woman who had spent decades putting everyone else first. She is stronger, wiser, and unwilling to be taken for granted. And perhaps, in finding that strength, she gave her son the chance to rediscover his own moral compass and remember the values she had worked so hard to instill. Our relationship now is different from before, but in many ways, it's more honest. We see each other more clearly, with fewer illusions and greater acceptance of our flaws and strengths alike. The box I sent in anger became, unexpectedly, a gift to us both, opening the possibility of a connection based on mutual respect rather than obligation or guilt. In the end, that may be the most valuable family heirloom of all. If you've made it to the end of my story, I'd like to know. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member who took you for granted? How did it change your relationship? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to discover your own worth. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the most difficult decisions lead to the most meaningful growth.